Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in and listening to the Real Short Box Live. My name is Donald, and our special guest today is one Mr. Christopher D. Turner. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thanks for having me.
And Kevin, as always, always a pleasure to see your sunshine, sparkling little face there.
You're too kind, sir. It's always good to see you and your fresh, trim beard.
Yes, I'm very fresh. I used some citrus lotion today, so it's very nice. It's very good. So pretty today. I feel so pretty.
So fresh and so clean.
Right. So I'm going to do a few things in the background, and Kevin and Chris, if you guys want to briefly mention just a few films that we talked about briefly. I think last time we talked about some unmade superheroes. But
Yes.
maybe a little bit more on, I guess, the Nicolas Cage one, Superman, might be good, or, something else, whatever you want to discuss. I'm just going to do some background stuff, and I'll pop in here in a second. But you'll still see me. I'm just doing my thing. So
Doing his thing. He's dancing in the background.
Doing the thing.
Well, Chris, since it's in your background there, I know we discussed that Superman Lives. I think you said you were on that particular episode. I have that out of print documentary on the Kevin Smith scripted Superman Lives. Tim Burton directed, supposed to have been directed Superman Lives. It's a very interesting documentary. They came pretty close and just circumstances just killed the project.
Yeah, and Kevin Smith was supposed to write script with the giant robot with the giant spider.
Yep.
I read the script. Actually, a pretty good script. It's very Kevin Smithy, but it's more like akin to like Kevin Smith writing for He-Man than Kevin Smith writing for his own stuff. So it's very like true to the source material, and not at all like, hey, this is Kevin Smith movie by the dialogue. But it has Kevin Smith's style of dialogue and stuff. And I think it would have been an interesting mix of Cage and Burton and Smith all mixed together, and I think that would have been like a sight for eye. Oh man, I think it would have been
would have been an expensive sight, but yes, it would have been a sight indeed. And of course, they took that spider from Kevin Smith's script and used it for Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, that producer, Mr. Peters, he's quite the character. Because he was saying how he demanded this. So I want you to put this in the script. I want you to put this in, but it has nothing to do with Superman. I don't care. I want this in the script. Okay.
Yeah, very, very odd. And also note that Kevin Smith's pretty hit or miss. He did that Daredevil run that was pretty fantastic, and he did a Green Arrow follow-up that was great, and then he started doing some Green Hornet stuff for, I believe it was Dynamite comics and stuff like that. And then people started to get kind of tired, I guess, of the stories or the ideas, and he just got kind of, I don't know if he got lazy or if he just got bored with the comic book realm also, but then he just kind of started doing films like Cop Out, I believe was the one with Bruce Willis. So
yes, that's right.
There's that, By the way, gentlemen, I did post on the social media, so feel free to reshare that. And we should probably get some people popping in here any moment.
All right, I'll start spreading the word.
Sounds groovy.
The other one I was thinking of that we discussed briefly, but I didn't really get too much into it because we're getting towards the end of the show a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago, whatever it was Spider-Man 4. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 4. That's something that unfortunately we were denied the pleasure of ever seeing. And that should have came out about 10 years ago, back in 2011. And I remember they got pretty deep into pre-production. They're matter of fact, you might be able to find some T-shirts out there, like production T-shirts with Spider-Man 4 on it. But Raimi and the studios, Sony Studios, were having some issues again. He didn't want to have a repeat of 3 and the interference. He really wanted to get back to the heart and soul of a good story, and of course, it wasn't happening. So he's like, "All right, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore. I'm sorry." So he did the right thing by walking away.
Mom's here. Everybody say hi to my mom and dad.
Hello, Mr. and Mrs. McKinney.
Hello, guys. Thanks for joining. We have a few other people that have popped in here, so thank you, everybody that's popped in so far. We always appreciate the viewers. And and viewers like you, right? Isn't that like the PBS thing where they would go?
Yeah, PBS, yes. We'd like to thank viewers like you. Yes.
Yeah. It's possible with viewers like you.
Yes,
so we
exactly.
do have what's some old media styles? We do have some Sega CD video games that we'll be giving away for the $100 donation tier. We also have this wonderful tote bag, hand stitched by small Indonesian children, and this is available for a $250 donation.
Hold on a second. We can't be affiliated with child labor like that. Child slave labor. That's not right.
Not if they're getting paid well. That's fine, right?
What do you get paid? 5 cents an hour?
Well, if the standard rate of pay for a child is a penny an hour, and they're getting 5 cents an hour, I mean,
well, I'm sorry, man. This puts us in a special place in hell. We can't participate in such things.
Not a great idea. Okay, all right. So you're not getting a tote bag, everybody. I'm sorry. Kevin is to blame for this. So it's all on you, buddy. Thanks for nothing. Thanks for nothing.
Thanks for nothing.
Right. Hey, Enrique, thanks for joining us, buddy. Good to see you pop in there in the chat. Always a pleasure. Kevin, that photo of the Spider-Man behind you, Mary Jane down there to the left, looks an awful lot. I always thought this an awful lot like Nikki. Was it Nikki Cox?
Nikki Cox. That name sounds familiar.
Unhappily Ever After on the WB network, I want to say. Yeah, with Bobcat Goldthwait, I think.
Goldthwait, something like that.
Yeah.
Goldthwait.
Yeah, who played the bunny, the imaginary, the bunny that talked to the dad. It was like basically Married with Children with a stuffed bunny that he talked to at night, which is weird, but it actually worked. It was very cool. And Nikki Cox, like everybody wanted her to play Mary Jane when they announced a James Cameron possible film. So that's kind of crazy. Hey Scorch, what's up? Thanks for joining. Today we are talking about some pretty fun stuff. We're talking about unmade superhero films, which is very cool.
That's the second one we're doing.
The first one we did was kind of like of all the absurd, like completely bonkers, insane shit that happened or could happen.
Like Jack Black, Green Lantern.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly that. So we have a slight tinge of that in some of these, but most of them are actually sound like they could be pretty solid, pretty good films. And it was just disappointing. Kind of sad that it all just fell apart. And so we're going to be covering a topic. I think each of us is going to do like 2 or 3 of these superhero films. We'll talk about it. And, of course, we're always all for audience participation. So if you guys have any bit of info or trivia or just even some general questions that you would like to throw our way, we'll be happy to catch them and, respond however we can, even if we make up stuff. Which I wouldn't do, but somebody else might.
Oh, you're accusing Chris? Shame on you.
I feel offended.
I know. He's questioning your integrity.
Well, it's not so much questioning it. It's just pointing it out.
Wow. But these type of shows are fun because, we can get into speculating on what could have been and some of the politics behind movies. And one thing you learn is just getting a movie made in general is very difficult. And this kind of shows you how difficult it is. You can get it approved technically to go into pre-production, and then anything can happen to change everything. It could be a change in the studio regime, and the next studio boss comes in and doesn't want to pursue the project anymore for whatever reason. So there's always something that can go wrong. Someone walks away, an actor isn't happy about something. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong.
Yeah, there could be a lot of crazy things that can happen. One of them, I think that we mentioned prior, was the George Miller Justice League film.
He really missed out on something special.
You know, and it's my fault because I wished it not to happen because I only remembered him from Happy Feet, and I hated that movie.
And you forgot about Mad Max, didn't you?
Yes, I completely forgot about Mad Max, and God damn, that would have been amazing to have. But alas, it did not happen.
Now, we know what you need to do, right? You need to ask for forgiveness. Okay, next time you ever meet him, you got to ask for forgiveness to Mr. Miller.
I have, yeah, definitely.
Get on your knees and ask for forgiveness. You say, sir, I am so sorry. I am so sorry.
Okay, so I put a couple of our sponsors. Thank you for joining, Ricky. See, you just popped in. We got a couple of our sponsors here, splatteredfrog.com. You go to that website, put in the coupon code SHORTBOX, and get 20% off your order. Splattered Frog is one of the best breweries, if not the best microbrews in all the land. They have some great beers that you just can't have quite yet. They're working on it, on getting national distribution. That'll happen eventually, but right now they're selling swag, merch, things like that. Pint glasses, hats, shirts, stuff like that. So please pop in on their site, show some love, tell them the Real Short Box sent you, put in that code, save yourself 20%, give somebody a nice gift.
Oh, look at that.
We also have another, Raptor Bacon is naked. Good to know. That's, you know what, you do you. I might not even be wearing pants, so it's cool. Janet popped in. Hey, Janet, thanks for joining. Another one of our sponsors is Half's Hot Sauce. Go to halfshotsauce.com. Type in the coupon code Donald Hiccups. For those that don't know, when I have too hot of a hot sauce, it causes me to hiccup. So that's a fun little fact. You type that in, you get 10% off your order. They have some wonderful hot sauces, including a dill pickle hot sauce that will blow your mind. So check out our sponsors there, Splattered Frog Brewing and Half's Hot Sauce. Scorch says, evidently in the 1970s, Marvel wanted to make a Dazzler movie with Bo Derek in the lead role. The film was never made because her husband wasn't chosen to direct.
Oh.
Oh. Yeah.
Spoiled milk right there. Spoiled milk.
Right? I mean, too bad? I don't think we lost anything here. You know? Scorch, I'm going to be honest. I don't think that anything was lost with the Dazzler film not being made. In fact, I think the world gained something. A peace of mind knowing that this film doesn't exist. Sorry, but that just sounds like it was made for... It would be very much a product of the time, and that time would be the 70s, I'm sure. Or would it be 80s? I guess it might even be just like early 80s, too. It's still not a fan of that idea, and I don't know that anybody would be, but, you know, hey, to each his own.
Never know. To each their own, right?
Yeah, Justice League made in the early 2000s. Raptor Bacon, yeah, we were just talking about that. The George Miller Justice League that was shit-canned. The idea just never came to fruition. DC had a lot of time to cultivate their universe, and they had a lot of chances. Warner Brothers DC, and they took their time and dragged their feet and was only working with certain characters. Marvel had this vision, and this vision really paid off for them. And then Warner Brothers DC went, oh crap, and they had to play catch up. But there was a lot of cancel potential between then and now, even. I mean, there's a lot of DC films. Just recently, the New Gods film with the director that did A Wrinkle in Time, I believe. It was directing A Wrinkle in Time. That movie did not turn out very well as far as like box office. And so I think then Warner Brothers became a little skeptical of the idea, and they were like, and they backpedaled a little bit, and then it's gone, just like that. And that's the way it happens in the movie industry, unfortunately. They're very, I don't know, I would say they're kind of like bratty little teenagers. They're just, you know, going to do what they want when they want, and if it's cool right then at the moment, then they're going to do it, and if it's not, it's so yesterday, and they don't want to do it anymore. So.
Very true.
Everybody wants to look cool until they're not. This is the way it is. Yes, my mom says Splattered Frog has really nice t-shirts for sale. She actually got one for my dad for their anniversary. So.
Oh, that's sweet of her.
Yeah, that was a cute gift. Because my dad's a big fan of frogs, and he likes the beer a lot. In fact, I went home to visit, as we all know. Those that have seen the podcast the last couple weeks, I was home in Ohio visiting family, and I got to try the cold-blooded wheat beer. It's a very, very good, very citrusy noted, without being too overpowering. Session beer is what I would call it, and I think that's exactly what it was designed for. And in fact, I know it is, and it's great. It's a great beer, and I'm glad I got to try it. So, thanks to Splattered Frog for that. I guess we're going to go ahead and get started. Who wants to go first on this? Anybody?
Let's have our guest, Chris.
You know what?
Turner.
I got an idea.
What's
now,
that?
We'll Rochambeau for it. All three of us on 3, rock, paper, scissors, and when you go 1, 2, 3 is when you do it. Like 1, 2, 3. You know what I'm saying? And it has to be visible on the screen. No cheating. So here we go. Whoever loses has to go first, and that's easy to figure out. So let's go. Ready? And 1, 2, 3. We're terrible at this. Let's try again. Ready?
All right.
All right. 1, 2, 3. What do you got, Kevin? Kevin's got rock. I got rock. Chris has paper. Chris runs that round. Kevin, it's you and I facing off. You ready?
All right.
All right. And 1, 2, 3. Oh, I lose. I guess I got to go first. Kevin had rock again. I went with scissors. So, okay, here we go. I'm going to choose the 2017 idea that they had for the film Justice League Dark.
Ah, yes. Still pending.
Still pending.
In some form, maybe on HBO Max or something.
Right. Hasn't quite happened, but we like the idea. For starters, it was going to be directed by Doug Liman. Doug Liman of Edge of Tomorrow fame, for those that have seen that film. It's a very cool, very good futuristic Tom Cruise film where they were trying to rename it Live, Die, Repeat, where it's like a Groundhog Day for fighting aliens and stuff. And it was really super cool, really inventive. Doug Liman also... if I recall, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, directed my favorite Jason Bourne film.
The very first one.
Yes.
The Bourne Identity.
Yeah, so there's a pedigree there with Doug Liman and his capabilities. And I liked him for this film. I liked him for this idea. I thought he's very creative. He can follow. He's really good with special effects. Just a real solid all-around director. And I was super stoked for this film. And it just kind of got buried a little bit. Constantine, I'm going to bring this up here. I'm going to pull up some photos of these, of the character sketches that they had done. They had done these pieces of concept art. Chris, I'm going to cover you for now, so I'm sorry. You're going to be covered in the middle.
And also, before Doug Liman, it was Guillermo del Toro who was the first director who was attached to this project.
Guillermo del Toro. That's where it picked up some steam. It had some steam, and then Doug Liman was centered in on that. We had Dan Stevens was going to be John Constantine originally. And I thought that was fascinating. If anybody that's seen The Guest knows his capabilities for acting and for being just an overall badass. By the way, if you haven't seen The Guest, which came out 2014, 2015, maybe somewhere around there. Phenomenal film. Really, really well done. Kind of a psychopathic, cool, Hitman-esque babysitter kind of vibe. It's really weird, but really good. So if you get a chance to see The Guest, I highly recommend it. But that's Dan Stevens, and they were going to have him play John Constantine, which I thought was a very solid choice. While it's not the dude from Legends of Tomorrow, Chris, which I know we both love, I think Dan Stevens would have been a good choice, kind of as a backup. And for Zatanna, they had Natalie Dormer, who played Joffrey's bride. I can't remember her name in this. Kevin, help me out with that.
Oh, you talk about
Game of Thrones.
yeah, Game of Thrones. Yes, there was the flowers. The give me 1 second. I gotta.
Yeah.
It's been
Yeah,
a
go
while.
ahead. But if you look at the look that they're giving her, it's a very kind of a not a classic Zatanna magician costume or whatever, but a very gothic look to her. Gave her an edge, which I don't mind so much with Zatanna. I feel like she can still look cool and do magic and stuff. You just always want certain elements of costumes when you're talking about superheroes, and for some reason, it's really hard for writers and directors to give us that.
Marjorie Tyrell.
Marjorie Tyrell. There we go. Thank you.
Meanwhile, her brother would, of course, become Iron Fist in another show.
Oh,
Loris Tyrell.
here we go. We've got an interesting factoid here. Enrique says, Edge of Tomorrow is based on the manga All You Need Is Kill by Hiroshi Sakurazaka. Okay, thank you. Sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, that's cool, Enrique. Thank you for that little bit of information. Appreciate that.
That also played Anne Boleyn in The Tudors.
Yes.
Bringing sexy to the screen on many shows.
Yes.
There you go.
Can't go wrong with that. I'm going to bring up another character that we would have had for this film. Chiwetel Ejiofor was going to play Jason Blood, a.k.a. Entrican the Demon.
Wow, that would have been interesting.
What an inspired choice. Now, this would have been right around the time, if not like slightly before, or maybe just slightly after his appearance as Baron Mordo in the Doctor Strange film. So from one magic character to another. And it's strange how DC and Marvel tend to just keep poaching each other's talent to play characters in their films.
And directors, for that matter.
For superhero films, particularly. Yeah, it's really odd. There's so many talented individuals out there that you don't have to do that. They just want to go with what's hot. And, oh, this person played this character? Well, then that was a success, so they must be able to do this.
But you have to understand, Donald, unfortunately, with these big corporations that own the studios, they're looking for absolute guarantees. Because, you're putting $150, $200, $300 million into these budgets. So they just want an absolute
I'm aware guarantee. It's a business. I don't have to like it, but I'm aware of it.
No, I agree. I wish they would take more chances, but it's just that they're very risk-averse.
Now, what I heard is that the character of Jason Blood, they were actually going to go with a little bit of Chiwetel's character from Kinky Boots, mix that in with Entrican the Demon. So we were going to get Chiwetel Ejiofor with high heels playing Jason Blood. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, dressed in drag. So, I'm kidding. By the way, no, I'm just joking. But Chiwetel Ejiofor did play in a film called Kinky Boots, which I believe was based on a British play originally. It's a really good movie also, so if you get a chance to watch it, again, I recommend it. It's a good film. It's a feel-good film, a lot of fun. So, good to make you smile. So that's Chiwetel Ejiofor as Jason Blood, a.k.a. Etrigan the Demon. We had a few other notes here as far as the characters. We had Deadman and Swamp Thing were going to be in this also. Now, if you take a look at the sketches of what they had for Deadman and Swamp Thing, Swamp Thing's on the left, of course, and Deadman's on the right. One of the things that they noted was that they actually did a little CGI bit for Swamp Thing. This is how close they were getting to starting to really wind this up and get it going. And Swamp Thing looked badass. I mean, he was all CGI and he looked great. And apparently they have like little fireflies constantly swirling and flying around him. Because like most people that watch nature documentaries knows, any type of tree or tree-like entity harbors thousands, if not millions, of different insects and cultures in worlds inside of them. So Swamp Thing is very much a bearer of life and a harbinger of that. So Swamp Thing I thought was a very cool concept, and I love that they were bringing Deadman into this. Boston Brand, a guy that died at the circus by the hands of a gun, by a killer, and born again brought back via Rama, I believe, that brought him back to to life, so to speak, as this spirit that can possess people's bodies and kind of enact justice for the dearly departed, so to speak. So some really cool ideas and some really cool characters. And again, this was going to be directed by Doug Liman. And one more note on this one, which I thought was very fascinating. We don't know if this was going to be the main villain, but the Floronic Man, they did a character sketch concept for him too, and he looks really badass. So if you take a look at that, I mean, how cool is that? And
look at that! It looks scary.
Right? Yeah, he could have easily been the villain in this, and taken over the swamps or whatever. But yeah, he's basically another. What did they call them, Kevin? Not totems, but something of the forest, of the woods, of like.
Are you talking about like from the comic books, like from the Rot?
Yeah. There was the Rot, there was the red, there was the green, there was the gray, and Floronic Man was trying to take over to be the new head of the green, so to speak, the patriarch of the green. So maybe that might have been the story, and world destruction would come, if he took over, and we would go from there. But it would have been a great story if that's the case. But we'll really never know exactly everything that they were going to do with this. But these sketches really tend to tell us a lot, and it looks really cool. And I'm hoping that this will continue to push forward now that we have Sky Robot Productions, which is what's his name?
Oh, you mean Bad Robot? You talking about
Bad Robot?
J.J. Abrams?
Yes, J.J. Abrams. Thank you. Yeah, so Bad Robot taking over, and we'll see where that goes. Andrew, thank you for joining us, sir. And yes,
hey, what's up, Andrew?
So that's basically the Justice League Dark concept and idea of what would have been and what still technically might be, because it's not quite off. Scarum.
Yes, it's not off yet.
Hello, Pete. Thanks for joining us. Pete's popped in. Appreciate that,
What's
Pete.
What's up, Pete?
We just went over Justice League Dark, so Kevin or Chris, I think, Kevin, since you lost second to Chris,
I'll go.
You should go next.
Yes. Well, the one I'm going to do next, and I'll give you time to pull it up, Donald, is Superman 5 with Christopher Reeve. The movie we would have gotten after the horrendous Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Now, I didn't know this, and this is very interesting. There were actually 2 nuclear men. Did you guys know that?
No.
There are 2 nuclear men. So they shot the footage. And what the plan was, they cut the movie down by like 40 minutes or something like that, Superman 4. So they decided, well, let's use this for part of footage for Superman 5. So one of the nuclear man would have been used for Superman 5, potentially. So this is some of the thoughts they had at the time. And one of the reasons why Superman 4 sucked was because they took half the budget to put it on Masters of the Universe, because that was Canon Films at the time. So they decided to split their budget. They basically played Christopher Reeve off. They weren't very honest with them how things were going to be done. And, it was just such a disaster, such a mess. So thankfully, the rights reverted or got bought back by Ilya and Alexander Salkind. They're the ones who did the first 3 Superman movies. And, you had better quality there, except for the third one, but you had for overall better quality.
Right.
So their plan was to do the movie like around 91, 92. But one of the issues that ended up killing the movie was they were forced to work on that Christopher Columbus movie at the time that came out in around 92. And so there were issues there where it went over budget and other problems, and that's why they ended up having to revert the rights back to DC. So that was out. That was it for the Salkinds. But one thing that was cool about the plot of Superman 5, we would have seen, and you and Donald and Jarrett, we talked about this all the time, giving Superman a real challenge that could really kick his ass, and that was Brainiac.
Yes.
And part of the plot of the movie would have been Brainiac, bringing his big ship to Earth, and he was going to take Metropolis, suck it up, and shrink it down, have it be one of his bottled cities. And also what we would have learned was there was a bottled city of Kandor, which is a city that was remaining from Krypton. So Superman, he would have had his first fight with Brainiac, really taking a beating, pretty much get killed for all intents and purposes. and he would have been brought to the battle city of Kandor and been, rejuvenated. But there were some awesome fight sequences where he takes out Brainiac. It looks like he kills him. He basically shrinks down, almost like Ant-Man style, goes into his, brain and, shuts him down. And you're thinking that that's actually how he defeats him. But before that, he looks like he kills Brainiac, but Brainiac isn't actually dead yet. And he actually takes on another form and just gives Superman all he can handle. And I'm reading through this. I'm like, my God, this could have been really, really interesting, because Superman not really having a real challenge, except for the three criminals from part 2. But other than that, even Nuclear Man was kind of a joke. It wasn't really that much of a challenge. He just scratched them up a little bit with those press-on nails, silver nails. But other than that, it wasn't a challenge. But this would have been something that would have taken Superman to his absolute limit.
Did you know that Nuclear Man actually made an appearance in the comic books?
I did hear about that. I heard they actually kind of made him canon in a way.
In a way, yeah, they kind of did, and then immediately did nothing with him afterwards. Like, it was like, oh, okay, they just did not. It just wasn't going to work. Scorch has something interesting. He says, in Superman 4, I like how the human character, Lacey Warfield, could somehow breathe in outer space because Nuclear Man had pulled her up there.
Yes, it's quite impressive, isn't it?
It's a good skill to have, that if you can... Man, I wish somebody could just grab me and make me be able to speak French or understand it. That would be wonderful.
That'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
Films are great how they can explain away things without explaining anything, and that's the beauty and the curse, so to speak. But always cool to see when it does happen. These tragic flaws in the films that are fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel bad for Christopher Reeve, because much like some of the Bonds, they just didn't go out right with their last movie, and it's just sad that had to be like his last Superman movie. The Quest for Peace. Yeah.
Which I need to go back and watch, and I think we need to do maybe we'll do a viewing party or something.
Retrospect.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little retrospect.
Yeah, a reaction video possibly. We'll just film ourselves watching bits and pieces of it and see.
And probably be laughing hysterically.
So you guys can live through our pain and not have to re-experience it personally. We could do that, I'm sure, at some point. Anything else to add, Kevin, to this?
That's it. Let's move on to Mr. Christopher D. Turner.
Hit us, Chris.
All right, I'm going to switch speeds a little bit and go to the other major comic book studio publisher, Marvel. And we're going to talk a little bit about little X-Men Origins and a little villain called Magneto.
Yes.
Yes. In 2004, Fox hired a screenwriter named Sheldon Turner, and he's and they said you could draft a spin-off of any X-Men film that you want, and he chose to write Magneto. He pitched it as kind of like The Pianist meets X-Men. And it was going to be set between 1939 and 1955, and it would follow Magneto trying to survive in Auschwitz. And then he meets Xavier, who's a young soldier, and then during the liberation of the camp, he hunts down the Nazi war criminals who tormented him, and lust for vengeance turns him and Xavier into enemies. Sounds very similar to something else that happened, a movie that happened later on. In 2016, Ian McKellen basically signed on to reprise his role, but they were going to use a computer-generated facelift like they've been doing recently in the last 20 years, like they did in The Last Stand, which was X-Men 3. Basically, they said that they could not make the movie without McKellen there to anchor the story, which would take place in flashbacks. David Goyer was hired to direct in 2007, and then they hired and then they wanted to do a bunch of actors in their 20s to play characters, and then they were aiming for 2008, and then in 2009 they were planning on shooting in Australia, but because of the writers' strike, it got delayed. In 2008, concept art was released, and in they announced the Wolverine.
Oh yeah,
and
Wolverine, X-Men Origins Wolverine. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
By the way, you know who wrote that terrible Wolverine Origins movie, right? Dan and Dave from Game of Thrones. I'm sorry, not Dan and Dave, but Dave from Game of Thrones.
But so they said that the project was receiving approval to film in DC. In 2008, Goyer, who was the director, said filming would begin if Wolverine was successful. The story was moved forward to 1961 and involved Xavier and Magneto battling a villain. So they changed it to being a team-up movie. But then in 2009, Ian McKellen came and he was like, I'm too old to play this role. I can't do it. So the movie kind of got shut down. And then they kind of like phased it into the story into First Class. So a lot of like X-Men First Class is a lot of same beats in the original version.
Yeah, I found that really interesting that they poached so many ideas from Magneto and just ported all that over into X-Men First Class. And X-Men First Class was a certified hit. But it had X-Men in it, you know what I mean? It wasn't X-Men Origins Wolverine or X-Men Origins Magneto. If this was successful, if Wolverine would have done well and it was a good film, and it did well enough, don't get me wrong, but universally panned. No one liked it. Then Magneto would have continued on, and then we may have gotten other films. We might have seen that Gambit film that has been haunting us for forever, and that's another one that we're going to probably talk about in another future podcast of one of these, because there's so many unmade superhero films.
Oh yeah.
We'll probably have a part 2 / 3. This is technically the unofficial part 2 of unmade superhero films, but more on the serious side. We did some funnier ones, probably about 6 months back, I would say, somewhere around there, that if you go to our YouTube page, Rumble Spoon Productions, and you look on there, you can find that podcast that we did, the live video podcast, where we talked about films such as the Jack Black Green Lantern film that never got made. Yes, that was a thing, guys. So feel free to check that out in our library or catalog of back live podcasts. But anyway, moving forward with this, Chris, did you like X-Men First Class?
I did. I really enjoyed X-Men First Class. I liked that it was different from the X-Men movies. The third X-Men movie gave me such a bad taste in my mouth because X-Men 2 was so good. And so like being First Class, being more like a war movie and kind of like different than just an X-Men superhero movie was very refreshing to me. And I thought Fassbender was a wonderful Magneto.
Yes.
Excellent choice for casting.
Like, he is the canon Magneto that they're probably going to go with for the future. So, I mean, and Marvel has been kind of quoted saying that. So, unofficially.
It's smart
They
because
better sign him.
He's a talent,
So
he's a true talent.
I definitely enjoyed there were some things that I disliked about it, but overall I thought it was a wonderful movie.
Right, like
one of my more favorite of the X-Men movies.
Like the unkillable black man that pretty much just died first. It's like, what? Okay, cool. All right, we're going that way. Okay, yeah. Andrew says, I love Gambit, but the voice acting from the OG animated series made him sound so dumb. What do you mean, mon ami? Cher, every trope in the French Cajun Creole type of dialect that you could think of came out. So, yeah, I totally get that, Andrew. Totally get that. Scorch says Scorch says the scene in X-Men First Class where Sebastian Shaw kills Darwin is chilling to me. That's what I'm talking about, Scorch. Darwin is the black actor. A character in X-Men. Darwin's supposed to be basically unkillable. He can adapt to any situation. And they immediately take him out. And I get why. They want to scare you. If they can take out the biggest baddie of them all, out of the new kids, then, oh my God, what will happen next? I get it, but the problem is they didn't build him up enough. They didn't build Darwin up enough to me to care that he died. So when he died, I was like, well, it sucks that he died, but okay. Now who are they going to kill, or what are they going to do? You know, there needed to be a little more time to develop some of those new characters so we can see them a little more. Particularly Darwin, if they were going to kill him. Darwin's such a cool character. So it really was a shame. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kevin.
No, so you know what that kind of reminds me of from the X-Men animated series? Remember during the Phoenix Saga where Gladiator from the Shi'ar Empire picks up the Juggernaut and just tosses him to like another side of the world, and like Jubilee, everything, all the X-Men have their jaws dropped. Oh my God, no one ever did it to the Juggernaut. So it kind of like, you know, up the threat. Like, oh my God, these people are no joke. If you can do that to the Juggernaut, then what can they do to us?
Right. Absolutely. The Juggernaut, it definitely wasn't a joke, because the Juggernaut could fight Hulk pretty much to a standstill a lot of times. He's a pretty strong cat, you know. He could hold his own. And speaking of holding your own, we're going to be talking about a very fascinating idea for a film that I am super sad didn't happen. And when I found out about this, I was like, oh my God, this is such a shame that this didn't exist. I'm talking about in 2005, 6, and 7, / even 8, there was this idea floating around. It was called a Green Arrow Escape from Supermax. Now, the idea... Right, the idea behind this Green Arrow... Oh yeah, Andrew, a Juggernaut Origins film would have been amazing. I would have loved to have seen that. Particularly because he is related to Charles in a way. Through marriage, I guess? He's a stepbrother?
Yeah, he's like a stepbrother. Yeah. The only problem with X-Men 3, they had him as a mutant, and as we know, his powers are magical, not mutant.
Right, exactly. So we step to Green Arrow Escape from Supermax. Now, this type of film just doesn't get made. And they wanted to do something different. Completely different from what they've done in the past. And I really put my hat tipped to them for this. But it was a really cool idea where I believe it was, what's his name? Goyer. Goyer was writing, and he co-wrote with another screenwriter to create Green Arrow Escape from Supermax. And the idea was Green Arrow was only going to be in it for the first 10 minutes. Oliver Queen as Green Arrow. This was more actually an Oliver Queen film than it was a Green Arrow film, because you only see the Green Arrow fighting for the first 10 minutes. He gets framed for murder, and then he gets sentenced to life in the Supermax prison, which is kind of a sentient type of prison in of itself. So if you think of kind of like a mix between Cube or perhaps even the 2007-2008 sci-fi thriller Lockout with Guy Pearce, that's very similar to that concept. So basically then what happens is that Oliver Queen gets stuck in this prison, and all of these supervillains are there and knows that he was the Green Arrow, and they're basically just all out there to kill him. And somehow they escape and they come after him, and he has to fight his way, defeating these bad guys, but also fighting his way out of this prison. They had rumored Matt Damon for the role, of all people, which was great, because we were just talking about Doug Liman directing the Justice League Dark film, and he also directed, of course, the Jason Bourne, the first Jason Bourne film. So that kind of connection there between these two films was cool. He was up for a top choice. Matt Damon was back in like 2008 for this role. It didn't work, but they came up with this idea where the story was somewhere between Jason Bourne and MacGyver, the character of Green Arrow in this. Hey Josh, love you too, buddy. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it always. So that was a cool idea. They weren't going to have Black Canary in it because it was just basically him in prison. So I don't think that they were going to make time for her to stop and visit him, or him to even be able to allow visitors. But they were going to throw in, this is what I love the most about this film, they were going to throw in a shit ton of B and C level supervillains in this. And we're talking about his the yin to his yang when it comes to archers. Merlin, who's supposed to be the second, if not first, best archer in all the land, but Green Arrow always somehow tops him. They were thinking about the Pied Piper, Blockbuster, and even like they were talking about the Riddler being a part of it, Lex Luthor being in there somewhere. They were talking about even Amanda Waller being part of this. And then there was hints of that they throw in the idea that the Joker was going to be in there somewhere. And this film just gets better and better. Think about it. You have Green Arrow stuck in prison. You know, he was stuck on that island for forever, so he's used to kind of being isolated. He's in prison, and suddenly everything kind of goes wrong. And all these villains are out of their cages, and they're gunning for him. And he has to fight his way out and kind of MacGyver his way out of things. Such a cool idea. Hey, Dino. Greetings from Norway. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Greetings from Los Angeles, then. So, Lockout with Guy Pearce, but with Green Arrow instead. A ton of villains. We've got Amanda Waller. We've got the Riddler, possibly. We've got the Joker in here. We've got Lex Luthor in here. We got all these B and C level villains, like the Pied Piper, for example, Merlin, and a whole host of other villains that were in there, just thrown around. We had Matt Damon, like his name floating around to be the Green Arrow. How cool would this film have been? I'm just sad. I'm just sad that this film didn't exist, but I got nothing else to say. Day. Right. Maybe someday, yeah. I mean, the TV series is done.
I was maybe his friend Baffleck would make an appearance.
Yeah. I mean, now certainly yes. And we'll be talking a little bit about that here coming up as well. But I'm going to go ahead and leave this next one up to you then, Kevin.
All right. Next one, and I'll give you time to pull it up, of course, will be James Cameron's Spider-Man.
Ooh la la. That's a good one.
I remember I heard about this when I was a kid, or basically when I was, I guess like a teenager. I heard about this for a long, long time. And I remember in college, online, I was able to find like the 47-page treatment to it. Don't know where I have it now, but it was a very interesting little read there back in the day. But check out who the cast members were supposed to be or alleged to be. You had Leonardo DiCaprio as Peter Parker Spider-Man. You had Kevin Spacey as Norman Osborn Green Goblin. You had Nikki Cox, who you mentioned earlier, as Mary Jane Watson.
Yes.
The late great actor Robert Guillaume as Robbie Robertson. You had Bill Paxton as playing a character called the Burglar. Of course, the late great Bill Paxton, another great actor. Michael Douglas apparently as J. Jonah Jameson. Katharine Hepburn as May Parker, apparently. Michael Biehn as Sandman. He goes by a different name he goes by Boyd. That's his name in the movie instead of what we know him as. Mm-hmm. And Electro going by a name Carlton Strand. So that's not like what we know him as. But Lance Henriksen was lined up to play Electro.
That would have been badass.
Yeah, it would have been. Last but not least, good old Arnold Schwarzenegger as Dr. Octopus.
Ooh, I don't know about that one.
After seeing Alfred Molina, I can't see anyone else playing Dr. Octopus. Right. It would have been very strange. Now you have visions of Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, and now you try to imagine him with 4 tentacles.
Yeah.
I'm going to get you, Spider-Man. Something like that. You wouldn't take it seriously. It'd be like, okay.
It'd have been just as bad as the Batman and Robin with him playing Mr. Freeze, yeah.
Exactly.
By the way, Kevin, Christina pops in. She says hi.
Hello, Christina. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thanks for joining, Christina. I like the idea of, I think Leonardo DiCaprio would have been a fine Spider-Man. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, back then. His best friend ended up becoming Spider-Man eventually.
Yeah, Toby.
Yep, Toby.
Nikki Cox, I think that, or Jessica Cox. What was her name? Nikki or it was Nikki?
Nikki Cox.
Nikki Cox. She was an inspired choice. I think she would have done just fine. Kevin Spacey, back then, not Spacey now, guys. And we did not know. Let's flash back to a time when we did not know that he was doing really bad things. he would have been a great choice to play such a villain because in real life, he plays such a villain. So
you think he makes a great Norman Osborn?
Yeah, he would have been a really great two-faced Norman Osborn.
Oh, jeez.
Oddly enough. You know what I mean? Like, but, you know.
By the way, one thing about the script, it was going to be more adult-like, so it would have been a hard PG-13. So it was going to be a lot of profanity, a lot of cussing.
A lot of nudity.
Going to be well, maybe that.
Penetration shots.
Well, I don't know about that, but there was going to be a sex scene between Spider-Man and Mary Jane Watson on top of the Brooklyn Bridge. Yes, sir. James Cameron had that in there. A sex scene on the Brooklyn Bridge between Spider-Man and Mary Jane. I don't know why. But one thing that would have been very interesting had the tragic events that we'll be commemorating 20 years on Saturday, the World Trade Center was going to have the climactic battle between Spider-Man and Sandman and Electro.
You know what? If this would have happened, this film would have come out earlier than the Spider-Man film that we got.
There is a poster out there, I think it's hard to find, where one of the early Spider-Man posters from 2002, but just before that, back in 2001, did have Spider-Man around the World Trade Center. Like,
I believe it had a web in between the two towers. Yeah.
Yep. So, as we know, that things change, so that did not happen.
Very true.
But yes, this was going to be a little more serious, hard PG-13 type film. And of course, Caracal Pictures was the ones who had the rights to it at the time. And right after Terminator 2 and the big success for that, this would have been the thing that James Cameron was going to go after. But of course, all the Spider-Man rights were all over the place, and it just didn't happen. And everyone just moved on. So it just could have been what had been. One thing they did maintain, though, was the organic web shooters that Sam Raimi would use in his adaptation of Spider-Man. So that's the one thing I did carry over from the James Cameron script.
Oh, thank God.
Some people liked it, some people didn't.
Nobody liked it. Nobody. All right, Chris, your turn. Next one.
I'm going to keep us rolling on the Arnold Schwarzenegger bandwagon here. And I'm going to take us back to 1988, way back when. And we're going to talk about Watchmen and all the different versions of Watchmen that could have been before we got to the one we actually got in 2009.
Which, by the way, is, in my honest opinion, my humble opinion, a fantastic film. Like, great film. I loved Watchmen, and I'll fight to the very end on this. I think it was really well done. They took a show, like an idea that could not work as a film and made it work well. And I thought it was great.
I think it's Zack Snyder's last good movie.
You know what? You might be right about that.
I mean, one could argue the Snyder Cut of the Justice League is still a relatively good movie. But yeah, I would say Watchmen probably is his last real, technically great film that he's done. Yeah, definitely.
But anyway, so going back, 1988, one of the co-writers of Batman named Sam Hamm wrote a version, like a screenplay draft of Watchmen, of the comic book. And he passed it around, but nothing really happened. I mean, they got around enough that they wanted Arnold Schwarzenegger to come in and play Dr. Manhattan. But once I got to him playing Manhattan and being Watchmen, nothing really happened. It just kind of stuck in limbo until 1991. And then Warner Brothers took control of the movie. And then a bunch of directors started getting passed around, and then the script started getting passed around, and other people tried to adapt the story. Terry Gilliam from
Monty Python.
Monty Python was brought in as
Brazil, yeah,
for a director and writer, and then Darren Aronofsky of Requiem from a Dream.
Man,
also
Gilliam's Watchmen would have been something else. It might not have been great, but it would have been a fascinating piece to watch.
Exactly,
for sure. And I think this is the first time when someone said Schwarzenegger in attached him to a superhero or a character, I actually went, that could work. So not bad so far.
It was a prime in back then too. Like it was the prime of his career. I think he might have just done Predator.
Yeah.
So anyway, so it was like, so they kept passing on these big time directors and writers to do this project. But as they were doing this, the comic book started taking a plunge in interest, and less people started having interest in the comic book. And then it was like, 10 years later, after X-Men and Blade were successful films, that actually steam started getting picked up again. And then David Hayter, who wrote the first 2 X-Men movies, and he actually was the voice of Solid Snake in the Metal Gear game series. He was attached as both the writer and the director in the early 2000s when it started picking up steam again. And they even shot like some test footage of his version of the film. And he wrote the screenplay. And Alan Moore himself, who wrote Watchmen, praised the script.
Wow.
But it didn't get off the ground because of the different studio. It kept changing studios and interest and all that stuff. So they just couldn't get it done.
Alan Moore liking a script, that's really high praise, by the way. He doesn't like anything. That's incredible.
And then go back to Aronofsky. It went back to him. But he got hired to do it, but he was filming The Fountain at the time, so he couldn't do it. So then they had to find a new director again. And so then we brought in Paul Greengrass, who had just shot another Bourne movie, The Bourne Supremacy. And they sought him to direct it. And he was to move the story timeline forward, putting it in a modern day setting. And they was all set to be a sure thing. But then management and studios and all that stuff changed again, and the priorities in the studios changed, and it was shelved again. And then suddenly, executives at Warner Brothers brought in Zack Snyder, and it became what we know. But so, I mean, if you think about all the different things that, a script that Alan Moore really liked, Arnold Schwarzenegger as Dr. Manhattan, think about all the different things that we could have had before we got the 2009 Zack Snyder cut of Watchmen.
Right. Right.
It's just there's a lot to think about there.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed about Zack Snyder, since he came from a music video background, that's what he was directing and stuff before he got into feature films. It was fascinating to me. His choices in music is very important to him, much like Quentin Tarantino, and that'll be the only comparison I give between the two that you'll hear. Is that they're very big on their music and how that works with the film. So if you notice that with either of those directors, it's fascinating. And Tarantino's another guy that's interesting and that's kind of circled around superhero films here and there as well. And that could be something that we talk about in another podcast as well in the future.
Yeah, I'm glad that the Greengrass thing didn't fell through, because that probably would have been horrible.
Yeah.
First, Grass is a terrible director.
Shaky cam.
Whoa. Ooh.
Well, I don't like his use of the handheld cameras.
Nobody.
Well, you see, I know we've had this discussion. The problem is I think the problem is so many people started doing it after he was doing it, or after wherever he got it from, that just became so annoying. But I've had no problem with those 2 Bourne movies, but that's just an opinion.
The first Bourne.
Looking at modern times, I mean, I guess they did that sort of with the Watchmen TV series. But I don't know if it would have worked back then.
I feel like Greengrass was like in the second Jason Bourne film. When it came to the third one, he pulled aside the cinematographer, and he was like, "Look, I love the look of it and the raw feel and the shakiness, but what we could use, some more shake. We need more shake.
No stirring, though. No stirring, just more shaking.
More shaking." And so that's what we got for the third one. And they might as well have titled it Jason Bourne in nauseum, because so many people were getting sick watching that damn film. Imagine if it was in 3D, everybody would have been puking up on each other. It would have been great. Like you go to the movie theater.
It'd be great advertising. This movie's so good, you'll be puking. I don't know. Like, it'd be good for the advertising for 3D.
Dino says that movie came way too late. Arnold was also mentioned to play Colossus in the early 90s, along with Clint Eastwood to play Cable. An inspired choice of Clint Eastwood playing Cable. I am glad, though, that we got Mr. Josh Brolin, who actually, I believe in a couple weeks, we're going to be doing a Spotlight podcast, an audio podcast on Josh Brolin and his career.
As we should.
Yeah, Darren and I are going to sit down, I think, and discuss it. And Kevin, you may or may not be invited. We'll see. It just depends on how I feel. Christina, Andrew, you guys definitely need to finish the Watchmen show if you have not done that. It is phenomenal. I started out questioning it and going, I'm a little bored. I don't like the way they... but for starters, they brought Louis Gossett Jr. back and, made him awesome. And anytime anybody has Louis Gossett Jr. in anything, I'm all in. Like Firewalker with him and Chuck Norris is one of my favorite canon films of all time. Big time fan of that one. If you haven't seen that, check it out. Definitely recommend that. Firewalker.
Louis Gossett Jr. could have been a good Nick Fury had the MCU started 20-something years earlier.
Right. Now he could be like Nick Fury on the moon, like they have it in the Marvel Universe, where he's 90 years old, which is pretty much almost his age. I'm going to go to the last one here in my box of tricks, and we're going to be talking about Batman Year One.
Yes.
So we're talking about Batfleck. So Ben Affleck, his director writing what we all wanted, basically, which is why we wanted Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck had been doing so many... Well, actually, no, this is Darren Aronofsky's Batman.
Yeah, Aronofsky, yeah. I was wondering. That's different.
But I'm leading to that. What we wanted with the Ben Affleck one was we wanted Ben Affleck to give this director's, what he was doing with all these other films, like Argo and stuff. And we wanted... What's that?
Yeah, that auteur look.
Right. We wanted that sort of feel. But what... we ended up just before that, was Darren Aronofsky had this idea of taking Batman back to his roots and going with the year one of Batman and him just starting out and him being young and him taking his lumps, so to speak. As far as the Batmobile, it really quite wasn't there. It hadn't come to fruition. We did have Alfred. We had the villains, but they were very, pared down, kind of very basic villains. I think what we're getting in this new Batman film is probably going to be the closest thing to the Aronofsky era of Batman films that we're going to get with the year
gritty.
One. Right.
Very gritty.
Now, DC did do
Isn't it young Batman in that, too? Isn't it in his first year?
He's a rookie. He's a rookie, I guess.
Yeah, it would have been him in his first year one. So it would have been a very young Bruce Wayne, very young Batman, kind of feeling it out. He had already discovered, of course, the Batcave and stuff like that. We got that brief re-origin of him with Zack Snyder in Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice, which, no matter what cut you have, is terrible, in my opinion. It's just bad. It's bad storytelling, bad filmmaking.
Martha.
I don't understand how this one got greenlit. I remember going to Comic-Con, and Kevin, I think you were with me when we were in Hall H, and they showed the clip of Batman and Superman, and Batman's like, "Do you breathe?"
Crowd went nuts.
And he's like, "You will." And it's the spotlight up on the roof, and Superman's there in the rain, and his eyes are lit up, and you're like, "Oh,
look cool." Crowd went nuts. Crowd lost its mind.
Went friggin' nuts. And then the first weekend happened. It was awful. It was not good. And Kevin, I had multiple people ask to watch that, and I watched that goddamn film in the theater 3 freaking times.
Wow.
Batman.
You should hazard pay for that, sir.
I should
hazard pay.
So, Zack Snyder, if you are watching this, you owe me money. You really do, because I should not have been put through that. I have psychological trauma. It's very...
Can't get the name Martha out of your head, right?
Right. I can't get the name Martha out of my head. So, we had the Aronofsky idea of this Batman Year One. We had the Affleck idea of Batman, and we have the new one, which is I can't remember the director's name.
Matt Reeves.
Matt Reeves. Thank you. Now we have Matt Reeves' version. Which, Kevin, I'm going to apologize in advance for their butchering of the Riddler, because it doesn't look like a good Riddler to me. I don't know. I could be wrong, but it looks like they're going to sandbag him just the way that Christopher Nolan did with My Scarecrow. And I'm not happy about that.
Yeah, we'll see.
Frank Huff says Batman vs. Superman is only the second movie I ever walked out of. Frank,
which one was the first?
Yeah, let us know which one was the first. And also, I sat through it so you wouldn't have to. I did that. I took one for the team. I took one for multiple teams, actually. It was just... Wow. I'm not pleased with that film at all. And so that's the idea behind it. I mean, it's very, very simple, like back to its roots Batman. Very gritty, very crime, detective-esque Batman is what we were going for. Reeves is taking that idea and rolling with that. We're getting a more detective kind of atmosphere through thread with Batman as well. Frank says the other film he walked out on was Wolverine Origins.
Oh, well, hey, you know what?
Nice.
I tip my hat off to you, sir. I understand.
Totally understand. All right, Kevin, you're up next.
All right. My next one, and I believe my last one, will be the unfortunate one that we will probably never, ever, ever see except by some miracle. That is Hellboy 3. And it pisses me off that they had to do that reboot when you could have just done Hellboy 3. And as we know, that reboot with David Harbour just did not go over very well. So you've already poisoned the well.
Man, I'll tell you, I liked a lot of it. Like, as far as, like, they used creatures, and they did CGI well, blended it well. The Baba Yaga character was absolutely terrifying, and they used a contortionist to play that character, which just blows my mind. And then the house with legs and stuff with the CGI with that looked wonderful. And David Harbour, he's fine. He was a fine Hellboy, don't get me wrong. He was a good replacement for Ron Perlman. If we couldn't have Ron Perlman, I'm glad we had David Harbour. But it just didn't work. Like, the story wasn't there. And I'm not saying the stories were fantastic with Guillermo del Toro's vision, but he blended them so well into the tapestry of with the story and the costumes and the background and the characters and stuff. It just worked. It made you grin. It made you smile. You felt warm about watching some hellspawn on the screen. And you didn't get that with the reboot. And I know Lionsgate was hoping that would be their big one. It just didn't work. So now we've had 3 studios take a crack at it. Sony did the first Hellboy. Hellboy 2 was Universal. And the third one was Lionsgate. And none of them, like, the biggest success, I think, was the Sony one, which was the first one. And the Universal one didn't make as much as the Sony one. So they decided not to go forward. And then the rights got to Lionsgate, and they thought, well, let's give it a shot. With a smaller budget, of course.
Of course.
Go figure.
Yes, very unfortunate. But the third movie would have had hell literally brought into the movie in this case. So you would have seen Hellboy fulfill his destiny, so to speak. You know, things when it came to a front. Plus, you know, he had a pregnancy. No, sorry, not him personally, but his lady, Liz, had a pregnancy, and they would have been born, the 2 babies. One was going to be kind of a light in the light. The other one would have been kind of in the dark. And that would have been part of the story. They said it would have been a lot of death in the movie, so we would have lost some characters. So there would have been a lot of people, you know, very upset and crying. So it was going to be a very tough ending to the trilogy. And also, the movie would have been very apocalyptic. And also, one thing that Del Toro mentioned, it would have had to have been like a $120, $150 million movie. And that was probably one of the biggest problems with trying to get it greenlit. It's just they didn't want to spend the money needed to make it happen.
Yeah, the budget would have been quite a lot, and yeah, that would make it very difficult. I know that Guillermo loves Hellboy, and I know Guillermo would always want to go back to it, But I don't think him and Mike Mignola are on good terms, which is why I think we got the reboot instead of a third.
There's some truth to that, because one thing he was trying to do, if when he noticed this wasn't going to happen, he said, hey, can we do this as a comic book? And Mike Mignola said, no, what you have in the movie world is one thing. What I do in the comics is one thing. I don't want there be any kind of confusion. So that was one of the issues. So we may never even see a comic book version of Hellboy 3.
Yeah. Yeah, we might get the... I mean, I don't see why Guillermo can't just...
Animated film, maybe? Maybe do an animated
Well, they did
version?
two of them. One was, I think, was like Seeds of Destruction or something like that. They did 2 Hellboy animated films, and I think it was Lionsgate that did the animated films, if I recall. Could be wrong on this, but they did 2 animated films, and they were pretty good. So if you're interested in seeing more of Hellboy and his background and stuff, check out the animated features that they have. They do have 2 of them that have been created.
Who did the voice? Did Ron Perlman do the voice?
They're available. I believe Ron Perlman did do the voice for Hellboy in it as well.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So in that case, maybe if you can put some money together for a Hellboy 3 animated feature and you bring all the actors back and just do the voices, that might be one way to kind of do a compromise.
Yep.
That's one way.
Absolutely. All right. So, Chris, let's have you do your third and final one, I guess.
Third and final film is a film that we kind of saw in Ant-Man. We're talking about the Edgar Wright version of Ant-Man. Basically, the history of this movie goes back to 2003, when Edgar Wright and Joe Cornish, who went and wrote and directed Attack the Block, they wrote a treatment for Artisan Entertainment, who at the time held the rights for the character. And they wrote this treatment which evolved around Scott Lang. He was a burglar, and they wanted to go really like the Elmore Leonard route. If you don't know who Elmore Leonard route is, Get Shorty. Anyone who's seen the show Justified, he wrote the Raylan Gibbons character, of books from that. So Justified was based on that. So it's very crime grit type thing. But then they said Artisan was like, we want to do a family thing. So nothing really happened. Then a few years later, Kevin Feige and the Marvel Studios, when they were forming, they asked Wright if he had any interest in doing any Marvel titles. And so then Wright showed them the treatment that he wrote for Artisan, and basically that got him the gig of directing Ant-Man. But they had no interest at the time of really having Ant-Man in the foreground. They were really interested about setting up the main Avengers, which was Iron Man and Thor,
right,
and Captain America and stuff like that. So Wright really took his time, rewriting and writing the story. His original story was that it was the idea that he had for adaptation is to have both Scott and Hank, which we did get. It was basically that Henry Pym and Scott Lang. You got a prequel, a prologue, where you see Pym as Ant-Man in the 60s, and then the contemporary, flash forward, where you see Scott's story, and then how he gets the suit and how he crafts his paths with Pym, and then they team up together, and so it was very sort of what we got, but not quite what we got.
Yeah.
He got his next draft done in 2008, which was 5 years after the first draft. Like I said, Marvel had no rush on anything. You got first draft of the Ant-Man script that we see in the second script. 3 years later, 2011 was his second draft of the Ant-Man script. As soon as he finished Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and then finally everything was amping up, ready to go. And then in 2012, when they were ready to release Avengers, Wright finally started being enlisted to visualize what Ant-Man would look like. And then they started doing test reels, and they started eyeing Ant-Man as a Phase 2 movie. But they allowed Wright to delay production so he could make The World's End with his buddies in England. So then it was delayed, and everyone thought it was one of his best films. I disagree.
What, World's End? You don't like it?
I like it, but I don't think it's one of his best films.
I think it is. I'll argue that. I love World's End. I think you have to be in the right mindset, though, and not compare it to the other two. It stands alone as its own. It's not... They call it the Coronado Trilogy, but it's very loose, of course, because there isn't a whole lot that intertwines them. The characters aren't the same characters that are played in each one. It's not a united universe like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Kevin and I believe Kevin was there, back when Edgar Wright announced that he was doing Ant-Man.
Yes.
And again, in Hall H.
And they showed the test footage.
In Hall H at San Diego Comic-Con.
2012.
Yeah, and they showed the test footage, and it was that scene where he was in one of the air conditioning ducts, and he was running through, and then he came out, and he blew back up, and then shrank back down and attacked a security guard and stuff. Looked very cool. And we all knew it was going to be, at that point then, it was not going to be Hank Pym. We all knew that it was going to...
Scott Lang.
Yeah, it was going to be Scott Lang. So, it was interesting that they went with that idea. And I love it, because it makes complete sense. But I also kind of feel bad for Hank Pym fans, because they didn't get him in his, back in his glory days. But you never know, we might get a Avengers Origin Hank Pym film.
Never know.
If Marvel gets desperate, which
or a Disney Plus TV series.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So 2013, right after he basically showed the test footage, he finally finished their final draft of the script in 2013. And then that's when the trouble started hitting. Because the part of the issue is that he wrote it as a standalone story. They really did not connect to the Marvel Universe at all. And that was a problem for Marvel. It's like, he said that he liked making standalones because it was, the premise of it needed time. And he wanted to use this crazy premise, but didn't want to bring all this other stuff in.
Right.
And Marvel decided that they didn't like that. So before I get to what happened, in 2015, they decided that they're going to do a July 2015 release date. And they had the casting down to two people, which was Paul Rudd and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I don't know if that would have been nearly as successful with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Because first of all, Paul Rudd doesn't age, so he can play Ant-Man forever. And I don't know, he's just lovable. Doesn't matter what kind of script he has, he's just a lovable guy. Marvel really wanted Gordon-Levitt because they wanted more youth, because they thought a lot of their heroes were older.
Well, and also Gordon-Levitt was in a Batman film, so they wanted to steal somebody from another, and it's just weird, man. It's just weird. Let it go.
Rotating actors.
Yeah,
Paul Rudd was the right choice, damn it.
But Wright won the battle, and he got Rudd, was who he wanted. And then production got delayed again due to those sound stages in the UK, so they had to move it to the US, but they had to delay everything again. But then in 2014, this whole battle that started based on the script started heating up. They wrote two more drafts of Ant-Man trying to fix the note, trying to address the notes that Marvel gave them without compromising their vision. Marvel pushed the start date back again a month so that they could have time for the rewrites.
Yeah.
But Marvel didn't like it, so then they commissioned a rewrite of the script from in-house writers, and that and Wright had no input at all on the script. And then it came back, and it was entirely homogenized and it lacked anything that was Edgar Wright.
Right.
And that basically Edgar hated it, and he's like, you know what, screw it, I'm out. And he quit the show. He quit, and that was 2 months before filming was start to shoot.
And then we got Edgar Wright's Suicide Squad.
I don't know about that.
I'm just saying, he should hop over to DC and do some stuff, man. They would love to have him.
So then, what we ended up getting is they did keep what they say they called it. We kept the spine of the film, of what they wrote, but we lost everything that was Edgar Wright about the film. So probably a lot of the humor and a lot of the craziness. But they did bring in, but the new director, who's the new director?
Peyton Reed.
Yes, they brought him in, and then they brought in Adam McKay, and Adam McKay and Paul Rudd rewrote the script, and so they added some more of stuff for them, more humor. They brought in all the stuff that Michael Pena did, all his really scene stealing stuff. They brought that into it, and so they sort of saved the movie, but it was not so really what we got from Edgar Wright was still in the movie is the spine of the movie and Paul Rudd, and basically most of the casting. He did all the casting for the most part. But yeah, we did get those pretty awesome Michael Pena scenes because of Paul Rudd and Adam McKay rewriting it. And they also added, all the post credit stuff. That was all post. They, like I said, they made Edgar Wright made a very standalone story, and Marvel wanted it to be connected to everything.
Right.
Yeah, that's Marvel. I mean, and I understand.
Marvel, the movie that just came out.
I understand it, but geez,
Yeah.
at some point, okay, so DC, for example, DC's I'm watching currently, and I know I'm a little behind, so bear with me. I'm watching the Crisis on Infinite Earths with the DC series, Arrow, Supergirl, Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, and Batwoman. And they do a crossover episode per, show.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're able to do, the story's not perfect, don't get me wrong, but what they're able to do just for that little bit looks like so much work. And it's so hard, I would think, to get all that together. They even had Ezra Miller as a Flash in there. They threw him in to this whole thing, which I thought was very cool. And
wasn't Michael Keaton in it for a brief second too?
If he was, I haven't gotten to that yet.
There's a picture of him as Bruce Wayne on a newspaper.
You're right. Yeah. He is in that. He's on the picture. That's in the first episode with the Supergirl one, where it's the guy that was Vicky Vale's partner, reporter, in the first Batman film. You remember that guy? Kind of quirky,
yes.
kind of quirky, sarcastic dude. Yeah. He's in it, in Supergirl, and he's the one, he's sitting on a bench, and he has a paper, and he sees the bat signal, and he's like, uh-oh, big guy, I hope you're ready, or whatever, and he has the paper up. Yeah, so that's totally how they made that connection. There's even, Dick Ward, I believe, played Robin.
Yeah.
He's in it for a second, and so they do a lot of that.
And you get the Batman, the animated series voice in there in live action.
Yeah. He plays an interesting Bruce Wayne for sure. Yeah. So just the fact that they were able to do that for 5 episodes across with different directors and different producers and stuff like that, and all these different shows, and able to make that work is amazing. But imagine what Feige has to do to get all of... Oh, it was Burt Ward. Thank you. I'm sorry. Dick Ward. I don't know why I thought that. Thank you, Pete. But it was amazing how that he's able to still hold all this together. So I can get why, if Edgar Wright comes in and he's like, no, I want my vision. And Feige's like, no, You can see we're building this, and there needs to be a relationship between these characters. And he's like, no, I want this to be a standalone. That's what they do at DC. That's what they were doing at DC at the time. That's why I'm saying he would have been perfect for DC. Just kick him over there, punt him over to DC, and that would have been wonderful. It would have been wonderful. Yeah, I guess that's probably why I got it confused.
It sucks because this was his passion project. This is the project that he wanted to do his whole life. And it's like, this was the project, and it turned out so bad for him. I feel really bad.
He still could do it, but with irredeemable Ant-Man. He could do it that way, which I believe Robert Kirkman wrote that. So he could still do that, which, like, I think that he was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something like that, and he took over, or he was a thief, or was working for Hyde. I can't remember what, but anyway, still very quirky and very criminal-esque, as you got with Scott Lang, but with this new Ant-Man, I think there could have been a way to make it work the way Edgar Wright wanted, but I'm glad he left the project ultimately, because we didn't get his vision, and we wouldn't have, and he wouldn't have been happy with it. So it's good that he moved on.
I was saying, like, I was thinking about this I'm trying. I'm not going to do any spoilers or anything, but I was watching Shang-Chi the other day about how some of the more successful Marvel films are the ones that have gone and been different, and I really feel like if Edgar Wright had gotten his, like, what is it? Black Panther was different, and they didn't kind of stick to this Marvel formula that they have. Shang-Chi was similar. And so these films that have gone, they have different cinematography and different rules within the filmmaking process, and kind of is more a little standalone. And where they are able to take bigger risks in the movie. Those are the successful ones. So I feel like if we had gotten Edgar Wright, it could have probably been one of the best or better Marvel films.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, possibly could have, but we'll, alas, never know. And much like all these films that we just discussed, we might never know what happens or what will be. Some may still come about in different forms and different ways.
I have an idea. Give Edgar Wright the ability to do his Ant-Man movie, but in a what-if live-action series on Disney+.
Oh, so like a 44-minute episode, so he has to condense it down even more? He's not going to do that.
No. I mean, like a series of episodes, not one episode, like a series of episodes. Like 3.
I don't see him doing it, but it's a cool idea. It's a cool idea. I think he should go to DC, though. There's plenty of quirky characters. A Plastic Man film would be amazing.
Dead Man.
Plastic Man.
Plastic Man for him? You think
Dead Man? No. Edgar Wright? No. Not Dead Man. Plastic Man for sure. I don't know, Kevin. He could play Dead Man. I don't know. He could do that. I'm just messing with you. But anyway, that's going to wrap us up for the night. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Anybody have any last-minute comments in the chat? Any questions or anything? We're happy to field those before we close out for the evening. I just want to mention again, though, while we wait, we have a couple of lovely sponsors. One's Half's Hot Sauce. Check them out, halfshotsauce.com. Or you can go to Splattered Frog and check out their website as well. That's our other sponsor. I got the hat here. It's a really cool hat, you can see. It's like a trucker hat. Very cool. You can get one of these for like $20 with shipping included. It's fantastic. So check them out. Love you too, Pete. Thank you. Scorch says, a number of sources say that Colossus is made of osmium. If that were the case, he'd crack the sidewalk every time he took a step. There's a lot of things with that, like within the superhero world, that you just have to kind of take a step back and go, okay, we'll allow it. But technically, this wouldn't work because, you know what I mean? Like, there really is. Good night, Mom. Love you too. So thank you again, everybody, for tuning in and listening to us here at the Real Short Box. My name is Donald, and of course, Kevin's here, and special guest Christopher D. Turner. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Kevin, why don't you tell them some of our podcast platforms where they can find us for our audio podcasts?
Well, I know we're on the Apple platform. We're on Google Play. We're on Spreaker, Blueberry. I can never say it right.
Blueberry. Amazon.
Amazon. And of course, you can find us on YouTube as well.
iHeartRadio is another one.
iHeartRadio.
Yep, we're on a lot of them. So find us if you will. If you can't find us, let us know. We'll get on that platform for you. But in the meantime, perhaps we will see you
at the inquisitive, jolly, and always kind comic book shop. Have a good night. Enjoy the rest of your Labor Day weekend. Thank you so much.